Okay, we are now live, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So welcome everybody to the 87th meeting of the Economy Committee. The meeting will be broadcast live when open to the public, and a recording will be made available on the committee's webpage on the Assembly website. Just to remind members that bill briefings will be hand-sorted as per protocol, and just to remind members also to mute the tablet device when we're not speaking. So just also to advise members that we are going to break about 25 past 10 to allow me to go to the chamber and to move the motion to extend the committee stage of the domestic abuse safe leave bill, as obviously the business was carried over from yesterday evening. So we also have to be finished today by 12 noon. Does that still stand, Peter? Yes?
Chair, no, we have a bit longer now that we're on a slightly different system.
Okay.
We don't have to cut off at 12 anymore, so we have a little bit longer than that.
Okay, thank you. So moving on then to item number 1, which is apologies. We have no apologies indicated. No, Peter?
Chair, Claire Sugden has indicated apologies, and Matthew O'Toole will be slightly late.
Okay, thank you. So moving on then to item number 2, which is draft minutes. There is a copy of the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of January at page 3 of table papers. Are members content that those are an accurate record of the meeting? And then there is a copy of the draft record of decisions of the meeting on the 12th of January at page 8 of table papers. Are members content that that's an accurate reflection of the meeting? Okay. So moving on then to item number 3, which is Chair's business. Just a couple of items under this. So first of all, members will be aware that it has been revealed in the media that Invest NI will be undergoing an external review. So if members are content that we would seek some details from the department in respect of that, including as to whether it's an advisory review or whether it's a catalyst for redesign, or what the terms of reference for that is and the timescale, obviously, for the completion of that. So if members are content that we would seek to do that. I'm seeing nodding. Okay, thank you. And then obviously members will have received, hopefully at this point, the department's amendments to the parental bereavement leave and pay bill for further consideration clause. So we only received those after 9 o'clock last night, so members may not have had an opportunity yet to look at the detail of those and what they mean for the bill in terms of the amendments were made at consideration stage. So if members are content, we were going to try and seek to get departmental officials either to join this meeting this morning at some point, or maybe even this afternoon, or to try and get a briefing scheduled at some point over this today or tomorrow. So
Chair,
members,
Chair,
yes, sorry, go ahead, Peter.
Chair, we've confirmed them for 11:30.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, so members happy enough with that, and we can come back then to obviously have the discussion with the officials at that point. Okay. Okay, Peter, so we're going to move on then to item number 4, which is the small scale green energy bill and the informal clause by clause. So there is a clerk's memo at page 7 of our packs. The bill as introduced is at page 9 of our packs. And then there's the explanatory and financial memorandum at page 21. So just to advise members that obviously we have discussed this in closed session last week. We agreed to move now to informal clause by clause. So if the committee wishes to reserve its position on a bill, then the Bills Office have advised that there's no requirement for us to do clause by clause scrutiny. So the committee position would then be outlined in the draft committee report, i.e. that the committee will reserve its position on the clauses of the bill and present the evidence that we received as part of the committee report for consideration by the Assembly should the bill proceed to consideration stage. And apologies, members, my printer has decided that it's calibrating here beside me, so hold on, I'm going to switch it off. There we go. So hopefully you were able to hear that okay? Okay. So Peter,
So, Chair, what needs to happen now then is members need to decide whether or not they're content to proceed with reserving their position on this bill, as had been discussed last week. As you've set out, if members are content to reserve their position, that's what will be put down in the committee bill report, and there'd be no requirement then to do clause by clause scrutiny.
Okay.
So if members are content on that, we can proceed. Are there any members who aren't? Unfortunately, I can't see anyone, so I'm relying on Chair on you to see if anyone's putting up their hand or anything. If there's assent on that, and there's no one wanting to say anything different, then we can take that reserved position. Chair, are there any members indicating they wish to speak on that?
There are no members indicating at this stage, but if anybody wants to stick their hand up or put their name in the chat, we'll give you a couple of seconds. No, Peter?
So, Chair, then that's the committee position. If members are content then that the committee reserves its position on the small-scale green energy bill, and that's what will appear in the committee's report, which is already, we've drafted it. So that's already in there in the copy that members received.
Okay. Okay, so then do we move to the normal?
If you want to then proceed, we don't need to do by clause. So we.
Okay. So as the committee has, this is now item number 5.
So we could actually proceed then to the committee report. So
okay.
If you go to
5.1.
Yes.
So at 5.1 in of our pack, there is the draft committee report at page 16 of table paper. So if members want to get that in front of them, and we can start to go through that. So the committee will now consider the draft committee report on the small scale green energy bill. And that is at page 16 of the pack, and just to advise members that some of the page numbers referred to may change during reformatting. So the committee is also expecting a report on the delegated powers within the bill from the examiner of statutory rules. Once this is received and provided there are no issues with that, a line will then be added to the report to insert that to that effect. So if members could refer to the title page, the table of contents.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry, somebody coming in? No?
Chair, I think it was Mr. Dunn.
Are you, sorry, Stephen, are you wanting to come in? No? Okay. So if members could refer to the table of contents, the committee powers and membership, pages 16 to 20 of the table pack. Are members content with that section as it has been drafted? Okay.
Okay, members are content. Thank you.
So then moving on to the executive summary, which is paragraphs 1 to 16, and that is pages 21 to 23 of our table papers. So are members content with that section as drafted? Okay.
Members are content. Thank you.
And then moving on to the introduction and committee approach, paragraphs 1 to 17, which is pages 24 to 27 of the table pack. Are members content with that section as drafted?
Members are content. Thank you.
Okay. So moving on then to the consideration of the bill at paragraphs 18 to 96, which are pages 28 to 45. So are members content with that?
Thank you. Members are content.
Okay. So then to refer members to the clause by clause, which is paragraph 97 of which is page 46 of the table pack. So are members content with that?
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
And then to refer members to the appendices 1 to 8, pages 47 to 51 of table papers. Are members content with that section?
Members are content.
Okay, so Peter, do we want to move on to item number 6, or do we want
Chair,
to?
I think this would be a good point to pause so that you can get to the chamber.
Yep, okay.
And we close the committee meeting down now until 10:40.
Okay.
Hopefully that'll give you time to go move the motion on the extension to the domestic abuse safe leave bill and get back. So, members, if we take a pause until 10:40, so we suspend.
Sign out and come back in again.
Yeah, well, you basically, what we'll do is we stop transmission, so you can stay in, and it'll be fine. We just be stopping transmission. But if you wish, you can sign out and come back in. Either's fine. But Tom should now be asking Tracy to suspend the meeting until 10:40.
Okay, so we are on item 6, which is the domestic abuse safe leave bill, and our informal clause by clause, and just that the Assembly has just supported the extension of the committee stage to the 11th of February. So there is a copy of the bill itself at page 31 of our packs, and the explanatory and financial memorandum at page 43, and a citizen space report at page 47. And similarly to the previous item, if the committee wishes to reserve its position on a bill, then the bill office has advised there's no requirement for clause by clause. So at this point, it's up to members as to how they wish to proceed. If we want to go ahead to do the clause by clause to support or reject, or if members have other views around how they wish to proceed with this bill. So if anybody wants to come in at this point.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I think we should go through it clause by clause, if that would find support with others.
Okay.
I second that. I'm happy to, Chair, if I may go through clause by clause today.
Okay.
Okay, Chair, if you want to then proceed through clause by clause, and we then take a vote if members are offering any kind of feedback on that, if you like. So if you want to do each clause, then we take comment from members as to whether or not they support it.
Yep, okay. So obviously we will go through each of the clauses and put the questions in formally, and then members will have an opportunity to formally consider the clauses again. If there's not consensus in the question, I will ask members to vote through a show of hands, and the clerk will confirm the result of each vote. So if we move to clause number 1, which is safe leave for victims of domestic abuse, is the committee content with clause 1 as drafted? And I'm seeing heads nodding. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Committee content with clause 1.
Okay. So the committee is content with clause 1 as drafted. So moving on then to clause 2, which is the annual report. Is the committee content with clause 2 as drafted?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Nods. So the committee is content with clause 2 as drafted. So clause 3 then, which is guidance. Is the committee content with clause 3 as drafted? Yeah.
Yes, and I think it's worth saying, Claire, if I may, that I mean, I think it's worth saying that one of the, I think, strong suits of this bill and the way it was presented by the sponsor is that she is clear on the face of the bill that it's for the department to provide guidance, and I think that answers quite a lot of the any departmental concerns around implementation.
Okay, so, and also that they need to review the guidance from time to time. So yes. Okay, so the committee is content then with clause 3 as drafted. So moving on then to clause 4, which is commencement. Is the committee content with clause 4 as drafted? Go ahead, Mike.
Chair? Yeah. 4.1 gives huge discretion to the department. I'm wondering whether it should have some sort of limit, as in, but not later than 1 year after royal assent or whatever time frame we think, because that really means the department can sit on it.
Peter, do you want to speak to that?
Chair, the committee can refer that back to the proposer. Obviously, that's how it's been drafted to afford flexibility to the department. But if members are content, because this is an informal clause by clause, we can ask the proposer of the bill if that was her intention or if she has any concerns, and then we can bring that back. And if members still have concerns, then the committee can come back to this again in a formal clause by clause.
I am content to take that approach, Peter. I assume we have not had a response from the department in respect of this as yet?
Not yet, no, Chair. And now we have the extension. We have that little bit of extra time, but not a lot. So we will, if members are content, we will send to the proposer that query of what was their reasoning behind not putting in a specific commencement and giving the department that flexibility. So we get that back to committee.
Are members happy enough that we support the clause now as drafted in the informal? We seek that clarification, and then if needs be, we can come back to it.
Yeah. I think it's, sorry, Chair, it's wise that the sponsor gets the opportunity to consider revision.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So moving on then to clause 5, which is the short title. Is the committee content with clause 5 as drafted?
Yeah. Yep, okay. Committee content, thank you.
The committee is content. So that is the informal clause by clause complete. So just to ask members to agree that that stands as the formal clause by clause for scrutiny.
Chair, because we've had a query, if we come back again and do a formal clause by clause, okay, once we have that query answered. So essentially what we have at the minute through the informal is clauses 1, 2, 3 and 5 have been agreed. Clause 4 has a query which we will seek an answer on, and then we'll bring that back and we'll do a formal clause by clause, hopefully at next week's meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So that is item number 6 complete. We're moving on then to item number 7, which is the Employment 0 Hours and Banded Weekly Working Hours Bill. There's legal advice at page 53 of table papers received in relation to what constitutes a contract in terms of employment law and the triggering of the provisions of the bill. Just to advise members that, as always with legal advice, it's restricted and should not be circulated further, nor should it be read out in today's meeting. So just to refer members to paragraphs 20 to 22 of that legal advice at page 58 of table papers, which forms the main part of the legal advice and the queries that were raised in respect of that. So the second stage of the 0 hours contracts, or 0 hours and banded weekly working hours bill, has not yet been scheduled for second stage. So just that legal advice is obviously for members to note at this stage, and will be part of our committee consideration if the bill gets to the committee. So are members happy enough then to move on?
Yep.
Okay, so we are going to go into closed session at this point to discuss item number 8, which is the resignation of the former CEO of Invest NI. So Peter, I assume we have to advise something?
We will. So
okay,
these
are live again, so we are.
Okay, Chair, if you want to move on then to
item number 9.
Yeah, item 9.
Okay, so matters arising then, members. 9.1. There's a response from the department at page 57 of the pack regarding the connectivity of farm holdings that have some form of renewable energy source on site to the electricity grid. NIE advises that increased generator connections and demand loads have left it with limited ability to accommodate further export connections without significant upfront costs to the connecting party, and the need for widespread distribution and transmission network reinforcement. So if members are content, we will forward that on to the Agriculture Committee, who had initially made that request for information. And obviously members will recall that we had NIE in and had some discussion around these issues with them at that point. So members content? Okay. 9.2 then, there is a copy of a response from the department at page 60 of the pack to the Infrastructure Committee regarding the inquiry into the decarbonisation of road transport. So are members content to note that? Okay. So 9.3 then, there is a response from the department at page 61 of our packs to the Communities Committee regarding the increase in energy costs and funding of the utility regulator, stating that the utility regulator funding is a matter for the utility regulator and the Department of Finance. So are members content to note that?
Thank you.
So 9.4 then, there's a response from the Department of Agriculture at page 62 regarding the committee's query about the energy price crisis and funds raised through the emissions trading scheme. The department states that it's not aware of any interventions by the British government using funds raised through the emissions trading scheme to offset high energy prices which consumers may be subject to. And obviously members will be aware that that is an issue that is still being dealt with at a British government level. And obviously there is need for intervention, as we have previously written to the British ministers about as well. So it's to note at this point, Peter, and I assume we can come back to at some point if we need to when we get other responses.
Yes, Chair. Once we've got a full set of responses, we'll bring that back. And obviously, if we get any indication of government at Westminster doing anything, we'll obviously come back to that as well, because we'll be looking at Barnett consequentials potentially and so on. So I think there's still a lot of discussion ongoing around this. There's been a lot of speculation and playing the issue in the media. So we'll keep a watching brief on that.
Okay, thank you. So 9.5 then, there is correspondence from Include Youth at page 64 of our packs regarding the loss of core funding for essential skills and efforts to meet to the Minister. We have previously written on a number of occasions to the Minister and to the Department about this issue. At the minute, I understand what the organisation is asking for is that departmental officials meet with officials from the Department of Health and the Department for Education, who are both willing to meet, but the meeting hasn't yet taken place. So if members are content, we would write to the Minister again to urge him to meet Include Youth to take that forward, given the urgency and obviously the loss of core funding for essential skills, and what the work that they do is very much with young people from care experience backgrounds and other vulnerable young people. So it's an important strand of work. So members content with that? Okay, so 9.6 then, there is a response from the Executive Office Committee at page 15 of table papers regarding grants for ventilation in high-risk settings. The COVID task force has established a cross-departmental ventilation group. Discussions are ongoing between departments to determine funding availability for a ventilation scheme, including assessing the feasibility and how any scheme could be delivered in order to allow businesses to respond to the needs for good ventilation. So that's again for members to note for now. Okay. So moving on then, item number 10, there are a number of items which have been received in relation to the common framework, some of which were deferred from last week's meeting. 10.1 is correspondence from the Minister regarding the company law common framework at page 68. There's a copy of that framework at page 73. Then there's correspondence from the Minister regarding the late payment policy common framework at page 80, and then a copy of that framework at page 84. The Minister has asked whether the committee wishes to scrutinise the common frameworks further and indicates that officials could provide a further briefing. So it's up to members, obviously, to decide whether they wish to scrutinise and to invite officials in to provide that further briefing and to seek views from stakeholders. I would be of the view that we should do that, but other members perhaps want to offer any views on that as well. Peter, do you have a note here in my notes about the timing of that?
Yes, Chair. We basically aren't really expecting our PMBs that haven't come to second stage to flood in on us at this point. So we do potentially have some space to scrutinise these common frameworks. What I would suggest is we do look to get the officials in as per the Minister's offer, and also we put out a request to our stakeholders, giving them the common frameworks and seeing if they have any particular views. It won't be a perfect process, but it at least allows the committee to give some level of scrutiny. And once that's done, then it's really going to be down to the committee to decide whether or not it knows enough to make a judgment. But I think it would be useful for the committee to be able to have a greater understanding of the common frameworks at least.
Okay, so our members have, go ahead, Matthew.
Oh, I was just going to confirm, I think it's important, if we have capacity, I think this is a really important thing. I think it's something that we have collectively as an assembly not had the opportunity to spend enough time on. So I think if we can, it would be useful.
Okay. Members happy enough with that then?
Thank you, Chair. We go ahead and proceed as outlined there, and we should have that capacity.
Okay, so 10.5 then, there's a response from the Department to the Committee for Education at page 98 of our packs regarding structured education provision for young refugee and asylum seekers. So that's for members to note. Then 10.6, there is correspondence from the Minister at page 101 of our packs regarding new powers conferred on the Department by the Environment Act 2021, Commencement Order Northern Ireland 2022, in relation to amending the UK REACH enforcement regulation. So that is for members to note. Then 10.7, there is correspondence from the Finance Committee at page 103 regarding the outturn for November 2021, indicating substantial DEL underspends in the department. The department has explained that these were due to delays in the High Street voucher scheme and delays to vouching and verification of Project Stratum, delays to further education projects and timing of receipts of claims and business cases from higher education institutions. The variance also includes budget cover for the energy strategy that was originally profiled in October, but that has since been transferred to other departments at October monitoring. So that's for members to note. And Peter, is there anything further that we need to go back to the department on in respect of that?
No, Chair, I think that will probably cover it.
Okay.
Can
Go ahead.
I just make a quick point there on the level of underspend from the department does it just, I mean, obviously the level, but also the breadth of the underspend is quite concerning. Just wanted to make that point. I'm not suggesting a specific committee action, and not all of it is to do with the moving picture around COVID, for example. I don't think I was aware, and maybe I should have been, but I don't think I was aware that there will be that an underspend was reprofiled because of the delay in the energy strategy. So I just would make the comment that it's the kind of breadth and diversity of the underspends is pretty concerning.
Chair, if it's helpful, we had taken that into consideration for the invitation to the Minister next week. Obviously, the Minister's coming to committee next week and we'll be in the Senate chamber for that. And the Minister has indicated he's willing to answer questions on, obviously, the ERAP, the High Streets stimulus scheme, but obviously these spend issues and the energy strategy as well. So that was kind of our intention, not to leave anything undone, but to be in a position where members can ask the minister those questions.
Okay. Okay, well, we can bring it back then for next week's meeting. Okay, so 10.8, there is a written ministerial statement by the Communities Minister at page 129 of our packs regarding executive support for the £55 million energy payment support scheme. So that's for members to note. Then 10.9, there is the NI Chamber and BDO fourth quarter 2021 economic survey at page 131 of our packs. So again, that is for members to note. Then 10.10, there is correspondence from BES to the chair of the protocol subcommittee at page 149 of the pack regarding a regulation on cosmetic products. So that's to note. 10.11, there's correspondence from the chair of the protocol subcommittee to the BES minister at page 151 of our packs regarding harmonised standards for toys. That's for members to note. 10.10, then there's correspondence from the chair of the protocol subcommittee to the Minister for Agri, Innovation and Climate Adaptation at page 152 regarding a regulation on batteries and waste batteries. So that again is for members to note. There is correspondence from the chair of the protocol subcommittee to the BES Minister at page 153 regarding an EU directive on radio equipment, again for members to note. There's correspondence from the chair of the protocol subcommittee to the BES Minister at page 155 regarding a regulation establishing a carbon border adjustment mechanism. So again, for members to note. And 10.15, there's correspondence from the chair of the protocol subcommittee to the Minister for Disabled People, Health and Work at page 156 regarding a regulation on the labelling and packaging of substances and mixtures. So again, for members to note. 10.16 is the 8th report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules at page 20 of table papers. So that's for members to note. And then there is a departmental paper at page 27 of table papers regarding the consultation on the department's intention to grant 2 mineral prospecting licenses to Dalradian Gold. The department is required to notify and invite representations from the public as well as a number of public bodies and key stakeholders of any intention to grant a mineral prospecting licence, and the intention to grant the applications will be publicised via public notice in a number of relevant local and regional newspapers for a period of 2 weeks from the 17th of January. So that's for members to note at this point. I think there was 2 that were out for consultation that closed in November as well. So I understand these are 2 renewals. So obviously members will have different perspectives on that. And certainly I have noted my objection to them already. So that's for members to note. Item number 11 then is any other business. We've had none highlighted at this point.
Chair, no, nothing's been highlighted to me, and we have departmental officials. So if you want to move to the briefing on the further amendments for the parental bereavement leave and pay bill, and if I could direct members to the email that I have just sent them.
Okay.
So members may find that useful when talking to officials.
Peter, I haven't got anything through.
Has it not come through? It should have come through as an email. It did say it had sent, and I've had...
I have it. I think it might just have literally 11:24, so it might just not be.
Might not have come through. Chair, I'm going to forward that again to you separately.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Just in case.
Okay, so are officials in the spotlight? Sorry, I'm just checking.
Officials are there, and we will bring them up into the spotlight. So we're just doing that now, Chair. And we're just bringing members out, so there'll be the officials in the spotlight, and members will be able to come back in once we start looking at questions.
Okay,
so
thank
Chair,
you.
go ahead.
So welcome to the meeting, Colin Jack and Kelly Sprott, who are members will be familiar with us, having briefed us previously in relation to the parental bereavement leave and pay bill. So if I maybe hand over to yourselves to talk us through the departmental amendments.
Okay, Chair. Since the consideration stage of the debate on the 30th of November, where the Assembly voted to support the committee's amendments to the bill, the team have been working very intensively on the amendments, which are technical amendments really needed. And I suppose the main purpose of those amendments is so that we can continue to introduce parental bereavement leave and pay as originally provided for by the bill, if at all possible, from the 6th of April this year. The two main amendments that were made by the Assembly were to introduce a day one right to parental bereavement leave and pay, and to introduce miscarriage leave and pay as another circumstance in which parental bereavement leave and pay would be paid. That has made the amendments that were necessary quite convoluted in the sense, particularly in relation to the day one right issue, because there's a lot of detailed wording that we needed to work with on the Office of the Legislative Council, and also with we've had a lot of engagement. Kelly and the team largely have had the engagement over the Christmas and New Year period with officials from BEIS, from HMRC, DWP and DFC here. So thankfully those officials have made themselves available, and we've had useful conversations with them. So we had originally hoped we would be able to bring forward further consideration stage on Monday of this week, but the amount of work that was necessary required us to defer for a week. And the amendments were literally just ready yesterday, so that's why you've just got them. But the Minister's letter really sets out what the themes of the various amendments are. Maybe the easiest thing to do, Kelly, would be for you to talk through those, the different themes.
Certainly, yes, I can do that. And apologies, committee, I can hear what's going on, but it's very faint for me. So that's why I'm sort of holding my headphones close to my ears. Everybody's quite faint. But yes, if committee chair is okay, you'll have the amendments in front of you. They follow sort of 5 broad sort of topics or themes. If you want, I would just take a second or two to go through each one and open for questions if that suits.
That works.
Okay, so the first one then is just what we're referring to as refinement of the powers in relation to miscarriage. So obviously the amendment proposed by the committee was voted in at consideration stage, and all that we are doing here, both in clause 1 and 2, which is the leave and pay clauses, is just refining that a little bit more, just to ensure that whenever we do bring in our regulations for miscarriage, that they can be afforded to both the mother and father, prospective mother and father. How it was worded before, that would not have happened. It would have only been the mother who would have been able to receive the provision. So that's the reason for those at topic 1. Are there any questions on that one, or do you want to just wait till the end?
You want to maybe go through them, and then if members can come in with any questions, if that works fine. Okay for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Topic 2 then, this is, as Colin alluded, and he's absolutely right, the work that we've had to do to think through every potential scenario that might come up by making this a day one right. That's where the complexities, the very serious complexities, have come in with this. So topic 2 is our best shot at handling this, at dealing with this in the primary legislation. So what we are talking about here is how an employer is going to assess someone's ability or eligibility for the parental bereavement payment when they do not have any service record. So members, I'm sure, will be aware that for any statutory payment in government, for anybody to be eligible for that, they must meet what's called the lower earnings limit. And the lower earnings limit not only obviously is linked to employment rights, but it is intrinsically linked to all benefits. So the lower earnings limit is £120 a week. And for anybody to receive an employment-related statutory payment, they must earn £120 a week. So previously, and forever, for the last 30, 40 years, that has been done by looking back over 8 weeks, and an employer can see quite clearly if someone has met that threshold, and then they are entitled to receive a statutory payment. If someone is in day 1 of their employment, or day 2, or week 2, or week 3, the employer has no way of looking back. So we've been trying to think about and decide what is the best way for that to happen. So this is what we're trying to do here with this topic. So what we have said is that we will allow an employer to anticipate, estimate, looking forwards, what that person's earnings would be over a period of 8 weeks. And in order so that then there is no inbuilt unfairness in the system, because we're trying to think of all employment contracts. We're trying to think of people on 0-hour contracts, people who maybe don't have regular hours every week. And that includes people who've been in the workplace for a long period of time as well. So whenever we first looked at this, we thought about, right, if you've already got multiple years experience, let's just have it as normal. You look back over 8 weeks. But if you're completely new into the workplace, you can look forward. But then through our own thoughts and discussions, and also then with DSO, we were worried that there might be an unfairness in that, where someone on a 0-hour contract and the previous 8 weeks before they suffer a miscarriage or have a child death, they didn't work very many hours, and they wouldn't have met that lower earnings threshold. But yet someone who's in day 1 or day 2 of their employment, they're looking forward and anticipating, and they do get. So what we have decided to try and rule out that unfairness is that an employer will have a 16-week window. And what they will do is, if a person has employment history, they'll look back over 8 weeks, and they will also look forward, and they can do any 8 weeks consecutive in that 16-week period. But what the employer will do is choose the best of those 8 weeks in an attempt to see if that person would reach the threshold. Obviously, if a person has no history to look back on, then they will just look forward over the 8 weeks. But so there was a lot of toing and froing and consideration in that. In the timescale that we've had, we still cannot be 100% certain that we have thought of every eventuality. We have literally tried our best in the timescale to think about every scenario that an employer will be faced with when someone doesn't have employment history. Okay, so that's the purpose of topic 2. Briefly, and that's where that comes from. And it's going to be, as I say, we've ended with a sliding scale, 8 weeks before, 8 weeks after, and the employer can choose the best of the consecutive 8 weeks in that period. Topic 3 then is, as committee chair, you'll be aware, it is our aim, and I think the committee's aim as well, that we can introduce parental bereavement leave and pay as intended this April, and then the rest comes later when we've worked it all out. So that's as it's entitled, the temporary provision for the week 26 right. Okay, so a new clause 2A will be put in, and basically what that will do for a short period of time will be reinstate the 26 weeks so that we can move forward as we are. Topic 4 then is changes that we're proposing to the commencement. Again, committee chair, hopefully you'll be aware that we've discussed with yourselves how it would be impossible in law to bring in and legislate for miscarriage leave and pay within 12 months of royal assent. So what we are proposing here is that the new commencement number 4, we will be removing that obligation that was placed in at consideration stage to obligate the department to legislate within 12 months. And what we have done, we have linked in law the commencement of the miscarriage regulations and the ceasing of the temporary provision for the 26 week. So they are intrinsically linked now in the primary legislative bill, so that they will happen together. When marriage regulations are brought through, now we know that's a draft affirmative procedure, so the Assembly will have to approve those. But when that happens, at the same time, the temporary clause for the 26 week will cease as well. Number 5 then is with regard to it's tidying up amendments relating to the schedule, which are consequential amendments to obviously everything that we're doing, and also I'm sure you'll have read it and you'll be aware, we accept and are cognizant of the fact that the committee and assembly want the first regulations relating to miscarriage to be draft affirmative, and we are obviously content to do that. But what we are doing here is bringing in an amendment to ensure that that is just the first set of regulations, so that in the future, if we make incidental changes or things change to the rate of pay or that kind of thing, they can be done by negative in the future, which would be normal practice. Not every change to SRs have to come back to be draft affirmative. So that's the reason for that. I think that's probably enough for now. I'm more than happy to open up to questions.
Kelly, thank you very much, and Colin as well. And obviously, just to put on record, recognition for the work that has been done between consideration stage and now, and appreciate the detail and the complexity of particularly the 26-week issue. So just a couple of questions from myself, and then I'll bring in members. So in the sorry, I'm just getting the amendments themselves in front of me again. In relation to the 8 weeks, since the section 4B, and then we have A and B, and it's and between, so just, I suppose, the technicality of why it's and not or was all I was wondering.
One second, I'm just literally going to read what you're talking to. I can be sure I'm answering you on the correct thing. So we're on topic 2, clause 2, 4B, A and B.
Yeah.
Yes, that's fine. So the reason that in subject the relevant window, the reason that we have 8 weeks ending to 8 weeks before, if you have employment history, and 8 weeks following, is this 16-week window that I was talking about earlier. It is so that people who do have employment history but are on 0-hour contracts, that they are not disadvantaged compared to someone who doesn't have any employment history. So if an employer looks back over 8 weeks and it just by chance over that 8 weeks you've had lower hours than normal, or your child's been ill and you've been off for a certain reason, and you wouldn't meet the lower earnings limit, that you would then not get that payment if we didn't allow the employer to also look forward and anticipate what would you normally be earning. And that might take you over the limit. So the reason for that is it's so the employer can do both and get the best for the employee. That's the reason.
So for example, if an employee had only started with the employer 3 weeks before, so they wouldn't have been entitled under the original plan, but this would allow the employer to look at the 3 weeks of actual pay as well as 5 weeks of anticipated pay. And there would be lots of other scenarios like that you could look at. Okay.
I think I understand how it will work, so no, appreciate that. In relation to the temporary provision, and I appreciate, Kelly, as you've outlined, that it is now linked to the commencement of the provision for miscarriage leave and pay, but there's no end date to the temporary provision that's being inserted technically, or there's no date within it. So April within a specified year and regulation, I think is how it's set out. Can you maybe just explain why that's the case, and not by a date, by April 2024 or?
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to come in on that one, Colin, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. And what it says, it will be 6th of April in any given year, as it has to be the start of the tax year. So it's our intention that will be as soon as it's practicable possible. But and we know that the earliest possible is April 24. That's based on HMRC timelines. But that is the earliest possible, because actually until this bill receives final stage and royal assent, we can't properly engage HMRC to say, put us in your system of changes for when you're going to be doing it. But more than that, also the fact that the regulations for miscarriage are draft affirmative, so they have to go to the Assembly and be debated and approved by the Assembly. That's something that's outside of our control. So we could take them to the Assembly and the Assembly say, no, sorry, this isn't what we want, go back and try again. And that might happen a few times. So we don't believe that we could stand over a firm date in that regard. And also, I've alluded very, very quickly to some of the complexities that have been involved, especially with making this a day one right, and the fact that the two are now linked together. Whenever we actually do start working through the detail, the minutiae of the detail of this in the regulations, we simply just do not know at this stage and under this time pressure what other complexities might come out of the woodwork. So in that regard, we believe that what we have, our obligation under, I think it's 2A2, that obligation is in law on the primary legislative bill, and that is an obligation for us. It says the department must by regulations. So we must regulate to end this temporary provision, and we also must link that with the commencement of miscarriage. So like any other primary legislative bill that would state that we have to do that, we are then under an obligation to review when those regulations are coming into place. The Economy Committee quite rightly would hold us to account on when those regulations were coming into place. And also, we would be open to legal challenge from any individual out there who knows that miscarriage provision has been approved by the Assembly to say, this should be coming in, when is it coming in, and there should be no undue delay. So we believe that what we have in 2A2 is as firm as we can be, just given all those range of complexities.
Yes, I mean, we had looked at that being a power, so the department may by regulation specify a year, but the decision was taken that it should be a duty, I suppose, to give the Assembly the assurance that this is something that the Minister and the department are committed to bringing forward as soon as practicable.
Okay. I appreciate as you say, that there could be unexpected complexities at a later date. I guess the end, there not being an end date did give me some pause for thought, and obviously, quite new to it this morning, or late last night and this morning as well. So look, I'll bring in some other members for questions if anybody has any at this point.
Chair, I've not had any indications in the WhatsApp group. If any members want to use the raise hand function, or come.
So just Stuart has indicated there. Can we bring Stuart into the spotlight?
Bring him into the spotlight, yeah, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Colin and Kelly, for that. And much, as the Chair said, much appreciate the way in which the department has worked through the complexities of this. And we as a committee, we will need to take some time to consider all of this. But just one question, just to start off with, and it's an area which I'm sure we will raise with the Minister when he comes to us next week, and that's around. In terms of miscarriage, there needs to be clarity as to who will be consulted in those regulations. It needs to be both appropriate but open in terms of what groups will be consulted, both in terms of medical and also in terms of lobbying groups that will have a great deal of interest in miscarriage. So I just want to tease out with you what the department's attitude will be around consultation on those regulations when they come forward.
Well, I mean, we would certainly envisage that we would need to consult on the policy underlying the regulations. We didn't include miscarriage in the consultation exercise that we carried out in the original bill, and indeed I suppose in terms of the committee's consultation, it really was only an issue that was raised in a number of responses rather than being covered in any of the questions. So there are a lot of details about how miscarriage leave and pay will work that will need to be effectively consulted on and ironed out. So, I mean, certainly at the minimum, we'd be consulting with every organisation on the department's equality scheme, but we'd also want to identify any organisations with specific interests that perhaps are not on the equality scheme.
And when can that consultation commence? You're obviously going to face into a fair period of downtime now in terms of the Assembly and the legislative process, but that shouldn't hold the department. Once the intent of the legislation is clear, that shouldn't hold you back from conducting that consultation.
Well, I mean, we're working at the moment on the regulations which will be needed to make parental bereavement and pay as originally envisaged operational for the 6th of April. So, I mean, the focus of Kelly and her team's work will have to be on that, over that period. And I suppose at that point we can start to turn our minds to what the consultation exercise on miscarriage leave and pay will look like.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stuart. John is indicating as well, so can we bring John into the spotlight, please?
Thank you, Chair. The amendments are technical and we only received them 9 o'clock last night, so it is going to take a while to study them with the short time we have ahead of the debate that is coming up upon us. I suppose the way I'm approaching this is to establish as to whether the department and the Minister has moved from resisting the view of the committee and indeed now the express view of the Assembly to move into a mode of assisting to ensure that the will of the Assembly is being implemented. And that's going to be proven both in terms of the amendments before us, but also the demeanour and the approach of the Minister and his officials moving forward. I think the explanations that Kelly has given today are enlightening and good, in fairness to her. I appreciate the fact that moving a policy into legislation in an area such as this is very, very difficult. I don't underestimate that task for one moment, and looking at the amendments you brought forward and the time gaps in them, I have some sympathy with that, but I do want to satisfy myself that it is going to achieve the objective as set out. So it's more of a comment, Chair, really, not a question at this stage. So thank you.
All right. I mean, I suppose that, although it was a comment rather than a question, I suppose what I would say is the decision of the Assembly was clear. It was a democratic decision. It's our job now to implement it.
Okay, I don't have anybody else indicating, and I suppose just from my own perspective, the one that did give me, as I said, the cause for concern was the lack of an end date, and obviously you have set out the rationale for that. But I wonder, was consideration given a long period of time, for example, up to 5 years, where there was still an obligation to do it within that period, and why was that not the way to kind of take it forward?
Well, I mean, we did look at various permutations, I suppose, of how this could be worded. And I mean, the problem with going for a long period of time, I mean, we looked at, for example, putting a date in of 2027, but I suppose our concern was, well, that would then look like that was the date we were aiming for, when in fact we're aiming for the earliest practicable date. Okay. So, I mean, we know that HMRC, the earliest date, from what they've told us up to now, the earliest date they could do it by is the 6th of April 2024. So I suppose that's the date in our heads, but there could be, there could be technicalities or complexities that arise that we haven't envisaged that might make that date difficult or impossible. But that's plan A as far as we as officials are concerned, I think. But I mean, I suppose so we've come up with the formulation we've come up with. And I mean, the Minister's very clear that he will, say on the floor of the House in the debate that, his intention and his officials' intention is to bring this forward as soon as practicable. I suppose we're also in a situation where there's an Assembly election, there potentially be a new Minister and a new committee after the election, and I suppose that's what he said in his letter. It'll be for the new committee to hold the Minister at the time to account on all of this.
Okay. Well, look, I don't have any additional questions. I don't think. Peter, is there any, just in case I have missed something?
Chair, there's nobody on the WhatsApp, and I don't see any hands raised, so I'm assuming there are no further questions.
No. Okay. Well, look, thank you for coming to talk to us. And just, I suppose, in advance of Monday, if there, if anybody does, once they've had the time to kind of peruse them in a wee bit more detail, if they do have any questions, can we get in contact for any clarifications that are necessary?
Absolutely, and I was just going to offer that. Trust me, as someone who's still relatively new in this area of work, it is complex. So happy to do that. We've learned a lot over the last period of months when we've been looking at this. So no, very good. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Chair, what I would suggest is members may wish to hear from the Bill Office.
Yep.
We do have Oveen and Stephanie on standby. If members were content, we can go into a closed session if members have specific issues they want to ask on or to seek advice.
Yep.
If members are content, we'll do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just organise that now. Okay, we're now back in open session, Chair. So if you want to move to confirming the committee's action and then time, date, and place.
Okay, so members have obviously had the opportunity to hear from officials around the amendments and to discuss with the bill clerk. So after members have had the opportunity to give those some consideration, we may seek to have a further meeting with the bill clerk. So if members are content, that's how we would proceed. Okay.
Thank you, members.
Okay, so then we will move to the final item number 12, which is the date, time and place of the next meeting. And at the minute that is scheduled for next Wednesday, the 26th at 10 a.m. in the Senate chamber, and the Minister will be attending that meeting in person. So that is us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.